Hello, family. Enjoy this relaxing moment with Surly Tales. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. It means the world to us. Also, share this video with your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. Victoria Johnson squinted against the late afternoon sun as she pedaled her aged tricycle along the bustling streets of Adamma, a rapidly growing metropolis in West Africa. Despite the modern cars and sleek motorcycles zipping by, her choice of transportation, an old, faded green tricycle, was deliberate. The paint on its metal frame had chipped off in many places, and the chain gave an occasional squeak. Yet for Victoria, this rickety contraption held more meaning than its shabby exterior suggested. It represented resilience and roots, reminding her of the humble life she once lived. Adamma itself was a city of glaring contrasts. On one end, you had sparkling towers of glass that seemed to scrape the sky, housing multinational corporations and tech startups. On the other end, traditional markets sprawled in labyrinths of narrow alleys, filled with open-air stalls that sold everything from hand-woven Ankara fabrics to the freshest produce. Street hawkers navigated the crowded roads, selling plantain chips, chilled water sachets, and phone credit top-ups to commuters waiting in never-ending traffic. The air was thick with a mixture of diesel fumes, sizzling street food, and the constant honking of impatient drivers. Victoria maneuvered carefully along a side lane, intending to avoid the heavier traffic on the main highway. Her phone buzzed inside her small leather handbag, but she decided not to check it until she pulled over. She was used to the occasional odd stares. After all, a well-dressed woman in a crisp white blouse, fitted navy blue trousers, and shiny black heels riding a tricycle was not a common sight. The children in the neighborhood sometimes chased after her tricycle, giggling and calling her Auntie Tri, but she usually responded with a warm smile and a wave. While she waited at a corner for a line of cars to pass, she sensed a familiar voice behind her. She froze. It was James Carter, her ex-boyfriend, the man she had once loved dearly and who had walked away without a backward glance. He was accompanied by a younger woman dressed in a tight, bright red dress that screamed for attention. The woman's elaborate hairstyle towered proudly on her head, decorated with shimmering gold beads. Victoria recognized her from a photograph on social media, Marsha, James's new love interest. Victoria felt her stomach tighten, a swirl of emotions threatening to erupt. She took a calming breath. She reminded herself that she had moved on, that the tricycle was her choice, her own idiosyncrasy, and she no longer needed anyone's approval. James's laughter broke through the chaotic city noises. He was pointing in her direction. "Look at that thing!" he exclaimed, obviously referring to the tricycle. Who even rides a contraption like that in this day and age, especially here in Adamma? Are we in a kindergarten playground? Marsha joined in the mockery, her laughter high-pitched. "It looks so pathetic," she added. "I mean, what kind of grown woman would be caught pedaling an old rust bucket? That's so embarrassing." Victoria's cheeks burned, but she kept her composure. The traffic light turned green, and the vehicles began to move. She pressed down on her pedals and continued on her way, refusing to look at James or Marsha. Still, her heart pounded against her chest with residual hurt and a smoldering sense of indignation. Their words sliced through her stoic exterior. Moments later, she stopped by a small cafe that overlooked Adamma's central district, a place where she often came to gather her thoughts. The cafe was a family-owned establishment that served aromatic spiced tea, fresh pastries, and jollof rice that could rival any five-star restaurant's version. She leaned her tricycle against a lamppost, locked it carefully, and stepped inside. The interior was cool compared to the blazing heat outside. Hand-painted murals depicting historical African figures adorned the walls. She found her usual corner seat and ordered a cup of ginger-infused hibiscus tea. As she waited, the earlier scene replayed in her mind. If only James and Marsha knew the truth. If only they had an inkling that she was not just some random woman riding a ramshackle tricycle, but in fact the majority shareholder and silent owner of Crown Motors, the biggest automobile manufacturer in the city. Crown Motors employed thousands of Adamma's residents, designed luxury SUVs, and even exported cars to neighboring countries. Her phone buzzed again. This time, she took it out to see who was calling. It was her secretary, Evelyn, reminding her of the upcoming board meeting in 2 hours. Victoria sighed, recalling that Crown Motors had recently hired a couple of new engineers in their marketing department. She wondered if James had the faintest idea that he'd just been employed by the very woman he had scorned. She had learned from an inside source that James and Marsha had joined Crown Motors. Marsha was now an assistant in the legal department, while James had been taken on as a junior manager in the sales division. Truth be told, Victoria had no plans to punish them or gloat in their faces. She had grown beyond petty vengeance. The real reason she had not openly revealed her identity was because she enjoyed the freedom of being invisible, free from gold diggers and manipulative business sharks. Whenever she visited the Crown Motors plant, she wore a simple uniform with a name tag that read Vicky, Executive Assistant. She quietly oversaw operations from behind the scenes. Only the core board members and a few trusted advisors knew her actual status. Finishing her tea, Victoria stood up and left payment on the table, adding a generous tip. The day was far from over, and she still had a board meeting to attend. She hopped back on her tricycle, more determined than ever. The memory of James and Marsha's derision might have stung, but it also fueled her resolve to continue living life on her own terms. She'd show up to that board meeting dressed in her sharpest suit, greet the directors, discuss corporate strategy, and sanction million-dollar deals. Afterward, she'd ride her tricycle home, unaffected by the stares of strangers. That tricycle was a personal symbol of her journey, her arrival from humble beginnings in the small village of Imuchi to her current position as a powerful industrialist in Adub. If James and Marsha thought the battered tricycle was ridiculous, they had no idea what lay ahead for them. In a city as dynamic and competitive as Adub, appearances could be deceiving, and those who dared to judge too quickly often ended up learning their lessons the hard way. The wheels of fate were already in motion, and Victoria Johnson would not need to lift a single finger for the truth to come to light. James Carter remembered the day he had first arrived in Adub. The city was an awakening, its bright lights and ceaseless movement pulling him from the quiet suburbs of Halewell, where he'd spent much of his childhood. Fresh out of a modest university, James's aspirations had been both simple and grand: earn a decent income, climb the corporate ladder, and one day secure a comfortable life that would make his parents proud. Adub had embraced him, at least initially. He found a small apartment in the district of Otaru, a residential area known for its array of street vendors who set up early each morning selling akara, bean cakes, suya, spiced grilled meat, and roasted corn. The thick sense of local delicacies filled the air, stirring nostalgia even for memories he had never known. Life was not always easy. There were times he survived on bread and tea for dinner, times the electricity in his building shut off without warning, but he managed. It was during his second year in Adub that James met Victoria Johnson at a cultural festival downtown. At the time, she was volunteering at a charity booth, helping to raise funds for an orphanage. She had worn a flowing Ankara skirt, vibrant with bold patterns of red, blue, and yellow. He was taken aback not just by her striking features, her smooth ebony skin, her warm smile, but by her selfless enthusiasm. She spoke passionately about her desire to support underprivileged communities. Their conversation that day started about the orphanage's needs, then evolved into shared stories of childhood struggles, eventually blossoming into a close relationship. For nearly 2 years, they were inseparable. They frequented local art exhibitions, taking in the creative bursts of color from rising African painters. They danced together at small music venues that showcased up-and-coming Afrobeats artists. On many nights, they simply walked through Adub's wide boulevards, hand in hand, talking about life's mysteries under the city's neon glow. Victoria's empathy and intellect struck James as extraordinary. But beneath the sweet romance, the seeds of discord were quietly being sown. James had always harbored big dreams of financial success. He yearned for the best cars, designer suits, and an opulent lifestyle. Despite his genuine affection for Victoria, he began to feel she was too content with just enough. Their arguments often revolved around money. Victoria donated a considerable portion of her modest salary to charitable causes, and James felt this was holding them back from saving for a better future. The rift widened when he learned that Victoria was part of a large family business but kept it secret. She had told him bits and pieces. Her late father, Augustus Johnson, had once owned a small workshop that gradually expanded into a moderately successful enterprise. However, she made it sound like it was just another local business, never fully revealing its scale or importance. James, in his eagerness for upward mobility, began to suspect that if Victoria's family truly had wealth, she was either lying about it or simply unwilling to utilize it for their shared benefit. Eventually, the tension reached a breaking point. James decided that Victoria was not ambitious enough for him. Their final argument was fierce. He accused her of lacking drive and wasting her potential on lesser pursuits. Hurt and disillusioned, Victoria asked him to leave. And so, he walked out without remorse, ready to pursue life on his own terms. In the months that followed, James threw himself into job hunting, networking at high-end lounges, and attending corporate seminars. He started dating around casually, seeking a partner who matched his ambitions. A year later, he stumbled upon Marsha at an exclusive rooftop cocktail event. She was bold, flirtatious, and exuded the kind of charm that turned heads in any room. Coming from a middle-class background, Marsha also had dreams of becoming wealthy. They bonded quickly over shared visions of success, and their relationship progressed at lightning speed. At first, Marsha seemed like the perfect partner. She encouraged him to apply for better-paying positions and often spoke about starting their own company one day. But unbeknownst to them both, they were about to land jobs at Crown Motors, an automobile company swiftly ascending to the top ranks in Adub's thriving manufacturing industry. James had been hired as a junior sales manager due to his strong communication skills and the potential he showcased during the interview. Marsha, leveraging her degree in legal studies, found a placement in the legal department. Neither of them had any clue that Crown Motors was linked to Victoria. To them, it was simply a fortuitous step up in their careers. The salary packages looked promising, and the possibility of rising through the ranks was enticing. James believed this was the break he'd been seeking, the chance to finally afford the sophisticated lifestyle he craved. Still, James carried a sense of resentment toward Victoria. In his mind, if she had truly cared about him, she would have revealed more about her family background, possibly helping him climb the ladder. He saw her philanthropic endeavors as excessive and self-defeating. He wanted power, influence, and the latest sports car. Victoria's quiet humility had stood in stark contrast to those dreams. Meanwhile, Marsha reveled in her new relationship. She enjoyed the perks James offered. Though small at first, he constantly assured her greater days were ahead. She followed him into Crown Motors eagerly, believing they could become a power couple within the company. They daydreamed about their future corner offices, extravagant overseas vacations, and the applause of subordinates who would admire their meteoric rise. Yet, the first fissure in their confidence appeared the day they saw Victoria on her tricycle. They had been heading out for a leisurely lunch, noticing a woman trying to cross the street near the intersection. To their surprise, it was the same Victoria they both knew, James's ex. The shock was momentarily overshadowed by how laughable they found her mode of transportation. It looked childlike and out of place in the corporate jungle of Adub. They joked about her, concluding that she had not progressed a bit since they parted ways. If anything, she appeared to have fallen even further behind in life. Walking away that afternoon, James felt a smug satisfaction. He remembered how Victoria had always been too humble, as he phrased it. Now, seeing her pedaling a rickety old tricycle only reinforced his belief that leaving her was the right decision. Marsha echoed his sentiments, adding her own scornful commentary. Little did they know that the board meeting Victoria would soon preside over had the power to reshape their destinies. Within the sleek halls of Crown Motors, their future lay intertwined with a woman they had dismissed as lacking ambition. And while James and Marsha planned their climb to the corporate summit, Victoria stood at the pinnacle already, silently watching every move from behind a veil of quiet authority. The winds of fate in Adub were about to change direction, promising revelations that would leave James and Marsha questioning everything they had ever believed about success, ambition, and the true measure of a person's worth. The towering headquarters of Crown Motors dominated the cityscape of Adoub's financial district. Its glass facade caught the sunlight, reflecting fragmented rays onto the busy streets below. Inside, the atrium soared several stories high, with grand marble floors and tall potted palms adding an air of luxury. Employees dressed in business suits and polished shoes glided through the lobby, briefcases and laptops in hand. This was not just a workplace. It was a statement of power and prestige. James Carter arrived at the imposing front desk that Monday morning, Marsha by his side. She had spent extra time on her appearance. Her hair was tied back in a sleek bun, and her teal-colored blazer emphasized her confident posture. James wore a tailored navy suit that he'd purchased using the sign-on bonus from Crown Motors. They both felt an exhilaration akin to stepping onto a grand stage. A friendly receptionist checked their names and directed them to the elevators, which would whisk them to the 22nd floor, home to the legal and sales departments. The ride up was smooth, almost silent. Marsha glanced at her reflection in the polished elevator doors, readjusting her blazer. James tapped his foot nervously, though he tried to appear calm. This was his big break, after all. When the elevator dinged and the doors slid open, they were greeted by wide corridors lined with framed photographs of Crown Motors products, sleek SUVs, compact city cars, and futuristic concept vehicles. One photograph in particular caught James's eye. A luxury SUV with the name Kilimanjaro X emblazoned on the license plate. The car exuded sophistication, and James vowed silently to own one someday. A senior HR representative walked them through orientation procedures. They filled out paperwork, received employee IDs, and learned about the strict confidentiality policies. Crown Motors prided itself on innovation and expected its employees to keep upcoming designs and technologies under wraps. After orientation, Marsha was taken to the legal wing while James was introduced to his new team in sales. Everyone was courteous, though somewhat distant. In a competitive environment like Crown Motors, trust was not given freely. You earned it by proving yourself. Meanwhile, in a private suite on the top floor, Victoria Johnson stood at a broad window, surveying the city below. Dressed in a sharply tailored black pantsuit, she looked every bit the accomplished executive. Only a handful of people in the company knew that she held the controlling shares. Officially, she was presented as Director of Special Projects, which allowed her to walk through the halls without attracting too much attention. She intended to keep it that way. Victoria's desk phone buzzed. Her secretary, Evelyn, announced that Mr. Azubike, the company's managing director, had arrived for their pre-board meeting discussion. Victoria took a seat at the polished mahogany conference table, where a digital screen displayed the day's agenda. The door swung open and a tall, middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair stepped in. He greeted Victoria warmly, addressing her by her first name, a privilege only her closest colleagues enjoyed. They discussed product launches, marketing strategies, and key hires. As they ran down the list, James Carter's name came up under the sales department new hires. Azubike hesitated for a moment, recalling that Victoria had asked him to keep an eye on this particular individual. The managing director wanted to ensure everything was fine. Victoria only nodded and responded calmly, "Yes, please ensure he has all the support he needs to adapt. I'm interested in seeing how he performs." Azubike, not privy to the personal history between Victoria and James, took her words at face value. He made a note in his tablet and moved on to other items. As they concluded, he mentioned the upcoming charity drive Crown Motors was sponsoring for local schools. Victoria's face lit up at the idea, recalling how her relationship with James had first blossomed while volunteering. For a fleeting moment, she wondered how different things might have been if he had truly understood her passion for philanthropy rather than viewing it as a hindrance. Down on the 22nd floor, James immersed himself in meeting his new team. His direct supervisor, Linda Hall, was a formidable woman in her early 40s with a sharp wit and an even sharper gaze. She wasted no time in explaining the competitive nature of their sales targets and the necessity for consistent growth. James found it both thrilling and intimidating. This was the environment he had always dreamed of: high stakes, high rewards. By lunchtime, he met up with Marsha in the sleek cafeteria, which overlooked a manicured rooftop garden. "This place is unreal," she whispered, her eyes scanning the space. The cafeteria offered gourmet meals, and employees moved through the lines with an air of confidence. "Did you see the benefits package? They cover partial tuition for advanced degrees," she added excitedly. James nodded, taking a bite of jollof rice that was surprisingly good for a corporate cafeteria. He felt like he had finally arrived at a place worthy of his ambition. "We need to make a great first impression," he said, leaning in. "I want to stand out among the junior managers. If I can show them I'm a strong performer from the get-go, I could be up for a promotion by next year." Marsha agreed, mentioning her own plans to swiftly climb the ranks in the legal department. The two exchanged supportive smiles, each imagining a bright future under Crown Motors' illustrious roof. In their minds, they were unstoppable. However, an unexpected event occurred later that afternoon. An email circulated company-wide, announcing a mandatory meeting in the Grand Auditorium the following day. The subject line read, "Meet our president and board, a vision for the future." Employees whispered excitedly. Rumor had it that the elusive founder or the major shareholder, rarely seen by the general staff, might make an appearance. Some speculated it was just another motivational talk. Others thought it might be a major product reveal. In her top-floor office, Victoria finalized the details. This meeting would be an important milestone, her chance to unveil the next phase of the company's expansion. Crown Motors planned to partner with an electric battery manufacturer from South Africa to develop eco-friendly cars. It was a monumental step for the company, one that would put them in contention with global giants. She also knew it might bring her face-to-face with James in a professional capacity for the first time since their breakup. The thought made her heart flutter with conflicting emotions: resolve, apprehension, and perhaps a tinge of lingering hurt. Still, she reminded herself that she had come a long way. She had earned her place at the helm of Crown Motors not through nepotism, but by her strategic insights and steadfast dedication. As the day wound down, James left the building feeling a surge of pride. This was his realm now, a place where his hard work could actually translate into wealth and influence. Marsha clung to his arm, matching his confident stride. Neither had an inkling that the next day's event might shatter their illusions. One of Victoria's last tasks for the evening was to review a list of employees who would be seated in the front rows of the auditorium. Board members and department heads were assigned the first few rows, followed by select star performers and new hires with high potential. Her gaze settled on two names, James Carter and Marsha Ray. It seemed that Linda Hall and the head of legal had deemed them promising individuals. She allowed herself a moment to ponder how tomorrow's meeting might unfold. Would James recognize her on stage as the true authority behind Crown Motors? Would he finally understand the depth of his misjudgment? Victoria closed her laptop and exhaled deeply. Whatever happened, she intended to maintain her composure. Life had taught her that true strength lay not in outward displays of power, but in quiet confidence and unyielding determination. Tomorrow would be more than a corporate milestone. It would be the day fate continued weaving a complex tapestry of past and present, ambition and humility, regret and redemption. And in the vibrant city of Adub, where fortunes were often made or lost in the blink of an eye, Victoria Johnson stood ready at the center of it all. The following morning, the atmosphere at Crown Motors was electric. Employees flooded through the lobby in a wave of anticipation. The usual morning routine, tapping security badges at the turnstiles, grabbing coffee from the espresso machine, carried an extra charge as everyone speculated on the contents of the day's big meeting. Conversations danced between hush-hush whispers and animated guesses about whether a new car model or a major merger was going to be announced. James woke up earlier than usual, determined to arrive before most of his colleagues. He wore a crisp white shirt, complemented by a slim black tie that boasted a discreet silver tie pin. Marsha, equally driven to impress, had opted for a charcoal gray skirt suit, her minimal jewelry accentuating her professional image. The two entered the building side by side, exuding a synchronized confidence. They made their way to the expansive auditorium on the 10th floor, an elegant space with plush seating, a sweeping stage, and cutting-edge audiovisual equipment. A massive projection screen dominated the stage, bearing the Crown Motors logo in bold, royal blue letters. Rows of seats filled up quickly, with department heads ushering their teams into assigned sections. James and Marsha found themselves near the front, their seats labeled with sales and legal, respectively. They exchanged excited glances, glad to be in prime positions. Linda Hall stood a few rows behind James. She nodded at him approvingly, evidently satisfied to see her new hires so enthusiastic. Marsha's supervisor, a poised and precise woman named Sharon Morris, offered a brief smile before directing her attention to the stage. The chatter slowly faded as a tall, bespectacled man in a tailored suit walked onto the platform. "Good morning, everyone. My name is Mr. Azubike, Managing Director of Crown Motors. I want to welcome all of you to this special company-wide address." His voice was confident, ringing out clearly through the overhead speakers. "We have some exciting developments to share with you about the future of Crown Motors and the automotive industry in Africa." A ripple of excitement passed through the crowd. Azubike then introduced several board members seated in the front row, distinguished men and women who nodded courteously at the audience. Finally, he announced, "And now, it is my honor to introduce the visionary leader and primary shareholder behind Crown Motors, Ms. Victoria Johnson." James's eyebrows shot up involuntarily. A hush settled over the auditorium as a slim figure emerged from behind the curtains. She wore a tailored royal blue suit, her posture erect, projecting a calm self-assurance. For a moment, James doubted his own eyes. That face, that was Victoria. His Victoria, the ex-girlfriend he had dismissed and mocked. Marsha leaned over, whispering in disbelief, "Is that your?" She didn't finish the question, but her wide eyes spoke volumes. James, stunned into silence, could only nod. His heart hammered against his ribcage, and a cold sweat began to form on his forehead. He fought the urge to slump down in his seat, his mind racing with unanswered questions. Victoria looked over the assembled employees. Taking a small breath, she began, "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Crown Motors has always stood for innovation, perseverance, and the drive to create world-class vehicles right here on African soil." Her voice was measured yet warm, and the screen behind her came to life with dynamic visuals showing Crown Motors' evolution. While she spoke, highlighting new partnerships and philanthropic initiatives, James tried to collect himself. Memories of their past flooded his mind. He recalled their arguments about money, his accusations that she was holding him back, and the last time he had seen her riding that old tricycle. Now, he sat in this grand auditorium, realizing that the woman he had dismissed as lacking ambition was actually the driving force behind the biggest automotive company in the region. Victoria continued, "The next step in our journey is to collaborate with Greencore Africa, a cutting-edge battery technology firm from South Africa, to develop eco-friendly vehicles. We aim to lead the continent towards sustainable mobility. This project, codenamed Project Horizon, is estimated to generate hundreds of new jobs and transform how Africans, indeed, the world, views our capabilities in advanced manufacturing." At this, a wave of applause broke out, the crowd enthralled by her vision. James was numb, clapping mechanically. Marsha, too, kept a frozen smile plastered on her face, concealing the turmoil swirling within. Victoria proceeded to outline more details. She spoke of the company's social responsibility commitments, plans to build community centers, sponsor vocational programs, and encourage employees to volunteer. And as her presentation drew to a close, she offered a personal note, her eyes scanning the audience. "Many of you might wonder why the majority shareholder of such a big company has remained relatively private," she said. "For me, it's not about the limelight. It's about fostering a culture of innovation and genuine collaboration. Titles and wealth can sometimes overshadow the real work, so I've chosen to stay behind the scenes until now. But I want everyone to know that my door is open. I am committed to each and every one of you and to our shared vision of a better future for Africa's automotive sector." She ended her speech to thunderous applause. People rose to their feet, and the standing ovation reverberated through the auditorium. Through the sea of applauding colleagues, Victoria's gaze flickered briefly in James's direction. Their eyes met for the briefest moment, and James could swear he saw a subtle flicker of recognition, and perhaps a hint of sadness, cross her face. Immediately after the address, Azubike opened the floor to questions. Department heads, engineers, and even interns eagerly asked about strategies, timelines, and career development. James's mind churned with internal turmoil. He couldn't bring himself to raise his hand. Once the Q&A wrapped up, employees were invited to mingle in the lobby for refreshments and a chance to meet the leadership team. James swallowed hard, wondering if he should approach Victoria or keep his distance. He turned to look at Marsha, whose eyes brimmed with a mix of apprehension and unspoken regret. Her voice was almost a whisper when she asked, "What are we going to do?" He inhaled shakily. "I'm not sure," he replied, feeling a lump form in his throat. "But I can't just pretend this never happened. I need to talk to her, or at least apologize." Marsha's features hardened briefly in defensiveness. "We laughed at her yesterday," she said, her tone hushed. "We mocked her tricycle without knowing who she really was. What if she fires us on the spot?" James shook his head, his thoughts in disarray. "I don't think she's that vindictive," he said softly, reflecting on the Victoria he once knew. She had always been gentle-hearted, rarely holding grudges. Yet he had no idea how she'd changed over the years. In the lobby, a variety of refreshments awaited, a colorful spread of small chops, samosas, and spicy meat pies. Freshly squeezed juices and chilled soft drinks were served by attentive waitstaff. Groups of employees clustered around, dissecting the announcements, brimming with excitement over Project Horizon. A few recognized James's tense expression, but he politely sidestepped inquiries, searching with his eyes for a glimpse of Victoria. He finally spotted her standing with a circle of executives and some high-profile board members. She was nodding thoughtfully as an older woman made a point about business diversification. James hovered at the fringes, unsure of how to break into the conversation. The chatter swirled around him like static, his pulse pounding in his ears. He caught snippets: expansion, overseas market, potential partnerships. As the group began to disperse, Victoria turned slightly, catching sight of James. Their eyes locked. For a split second, it felt as though time had paused, isolating them in a bubble of unresolved history. Her lips curved into a polite smile, though her eyes seemed guarded. She excused herself from the executives, stepping toward him. James forced a smile, his throat dry. "Victoria," he began, but he stumbled on what to say next. Every apology he had rehearsed in his head felt inadequate. She inclined her head gracefully, her voice quiet. "Hello, James." A heavy silence hung between them. This was it, the moment of truth. Standing in the grand lobby of a multinational corporation that she owned, James Carter finally realized how short-sighted he had been. And if there was any chance at redemption, it hinged on what happened next. Victoria regarded James with a measured calm. They stood near a window wall that offered a panoramic view of Adub's cityscape: tall structures, bustling traffic, the swirl of everyday life. Sunlight streamed in, illuminating the polished floors and the conflicting emotions that flickered across James's face. "Victoria," he repeated her name, a tremor in his voice. "I didn't know." She didn't respond immediately, studying him instead. Her memories of their past arguments, the pain of his abandonment, warred with a lingering empathy she couldn't quite extinguish. Finally she spoke, her tone balanced. "I didn't hide Crown Motors from you to deceive you," she said, keeping her voice low. "I wanted to build something on my own terms, without expectations or superficial relationships. It wasn't exactly a secret, but I also wasn't broadcasting it." James nodded, swallowing hard. "I understand. I was so focused on what I thought you lacked that I never truly saw your strengths. I was." He paused, searching for words that could convey his guilt. "I was blind." She pursed her lips, her gaze drifting to the city below. "We both wanted different things. I wasn't interested in flaunting money or power. And you always wanted more." There was no accusation in her voice, Just a statement of fact. He exhaled slowly, regret etched into his features. I see that now. I see how wrong I was, especially when we mocked you yesterday. The tricycle. He lowered his head, unable to meet her eyes. I'm so sorry. Victoria took in his apology with a quiet grace. She had grown a lot since they parted ways, both in business acumen and emotional resilience. Though she could sense the sincerity in his words, the scars he'd left behind could not simply vanish with one confession of regret. Apology accepted, she said softly, but an apology alone doesn't erase the hurt. I have a company to run, and you have a job to do. James nodded, relief mixing with lingering remorse. I appreciate you giving me a chance here. I won't let you down. He meant it. He was determined to prove his worth, not just for the company but to himself. Before Victoria could respond, Marsha hovered into view, wringing her hands nervously. Her usual confident demeanor had vanished, replaced by palpable anxiety. She opened her mouth to speak, but her voice caught in her throat. Ms. Johnson, she finally managed, I didn't realize who you were. I said some terrible things, and I'm truly sorry. I respect everything you've achieved. Victoria studied Marsha for a moment. She recalled the woman's mocking laughter in the street, that haughty stance, and the condescension she had shown. Yet standing here now, Marsha looked almost meek. I appreciate your honesty, Victoria said evenly. But words alone don't transform a person's character. If you truly regret your actions, let it reflect in how you handle yourself at Crown Motors. Earn your place here and focus on the work rather than appearances. Marsha's cheeks reddened. Yes, ma'am, she said, her voice trembling. I promise you'll see a better side of me. Time will tell, Victoria replied, pivoting to a more formal tone. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to speak with the CFO. We have another meeting shortly. Good luck to both of you. With that, she walked away, her heels clicking against the polished floor. She nodded politely to passers-by as she disappeared around the corner, leaving James and Marsha to stare after her. Both felt a surge of relief mixed with a realization that their new boss, and James's ex, had shown remarkable restraint. She could have fired them on the spot or humiliated them publicly, but she hadn't. Instead, she offered them a path forward, one contingent on their willingness to change. That afternoon, Victoria convened with the board to discuss finalizing the partnership with Greencore Africa. The negotiations had been months in the making, and the board was eager to seal the deal. As they deliberated in a sleek conference room, floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the hustle and bustle of Adub below. Victoria led the discussion, walking the group through detailed slides. She demonstrated a mastery of market analytics and a nuanced understanding of Africa's energy infrastructure needs. The board members exchanged impressed glances, proud to have such a capable leader. In moments like these, Victoria's transition from a soft-hearted philanthropist to a savvy industrialist became strikingly evident. She was both compassionate and sharp-witted, unafraid to negotiate the best outcome for Crown Motors. By evening, news of the partnership and Victoria's official unveiling as the primary shareholder spread throughout the company. James and Marsha found themselves the subject of gossip among co-workers. Snippets of conversation drifted through the corridors. Can you believe they used to date? He must be mortified. I heard she was the one who broke up with him. Serves them right for mocking the boss. James attempted to maintain a professional front, burying himself in new product training and drafting sales strategies. Marsha, too, immersed herself in legal research, determined to excel in her role. The weight of their embarrassment pressed on them every time they heard their colleagues whisper. After work, they met at a modest cafe near the Crown Motors building to discuss their predicament over cups of hot tea. A far cry from the upscale lounges they once fantasized about, this quiet spot felt more real, more grounded. This is a nightmare, James, Marsha groaned. It's like the entire company knows about us and Victoria now. He nodded, rubbing his temples in frustration. We have to focus on doing our jobs well. If we prove we're valuable employees, maybe they'll forget about this whole fiasco. Or at least, we won't be the laughingstock for too long. Marsha sipped her tea, the steam momentarily fogging her glasses. Do you think Victoria will ever forgive us enough to move on? It's embarrassing to admit, but she literally owns the place. One word from her and we're out. James let out a slow breath. I don't think she's out for revenge, he said, remembering her calm demeanor. But she's also not going to sweep what we did under the rug. We need to earn her trust, if that's even possible. Their conversation turned quiet as they contemplated their next steps. Neither wanted to lose this job. The opportunity at Crown Motors was too good, a decent salary, growth potential, a chance to be part of Africa's emerging powerhouse in automotive technology. Yet the emotional toll of working under Victoria weighed heavily on them. For Victoria, however, her personal history with James was only one thread in the tapestry of her responsibilities. She reviewed design proposals late into the night, evaluating which concepts would move to the prototype stage. She fielded calls from philanthropic partners who needed her to attend charity events. And in her quieter moments, she wondered whether James truly recognized the error of his ways or if he simply regretted his misjudgment because it compromised his ambitions. In the days that followed, workplace dynamics shifted. James grew more conscientious, arriving even earlier, leaving later, and volunteering for challenging assignments. Marsha reigned in her flirtatious habits, focusing on drafting contracts and reviewing compliance issues with meticulous care. Slowly, they garnered respect from some colleagues, though skepticism lingered. Victoria observed their progress from the sidelines. As director of special projects, she often received departmental reports, and James's newfound diligence did not go unnoticed. Nor did Marsha's improved attitude. Perhaps they genuinely sought to change. Or perhaps they were simply driven by fear of losing their positions. Time would reveal their true intentions. Through it all, Adamma pulsed with its vibrant life, as though indifferent to the dramas unfolding in Crown Motors corridors. The city moved on, day after day, capturing the hopes and struggles of millions within its sprawling embrace. And within the heart of this metropolis, three individuals, tied together by past affection, present conflict, and uncertain futures, found themselves converging toward a reckoning that would test their hearts, their pride, and their capacity for growth. A month passed, and the echoes of that fateful unveiling day gradually dulled into background chatter. Though co-workers still occasionally gossiped about James's and Marsha's past with Victoria, the company's momentum toward Project Horizon overshadowed personal dramas. Each department was abuzz with activity. Engineering teams tested prototype batteries, marketing departments prepared campaigns to tout Crown Motors' green revolution, and sales units began scouting new territories in neighboring countries. James dedicated himself to exceeding the monthly sales targets set by Linda Hall. He pored over spreadsheets, reached out to potential clients, and even traveled to nearby provinces to pitch Crown Motors' robust lineup. His commitment did not go unnoticed. During departmental meetings, Linda praised his work ethic, acknowledging his growing success rate. For the first time since he arrived in Adamma, James felt a semblance of pride he could honestly call his own, independent of any quick shortcuts. Marsha also found her stride in the legal department. Where she once breezed past finer details, she now meticulously combed through contracts and legal frameworks for the new battery partnership. She stayed late, learning from senior colleagues, and even took an online course to better understand international trade regulations. Her supervisor, Sharon Morris, expressed cautious optimism about Marsha's progress, reminding her that true excellence required consistency. Meanwhile, Victoria watched from her vantage point in the executive suite. Each day brought a new challenge, navigating board interests, juggling philanthropic commitments, and aligning the new green initiatives with Crown Motors' core business. She often found herself burning the midnight oil, sipping on cups of lemongrass tea to stay awake. Despite her heavy workload, she managed to keep tabs on James and Marsha, reading departmental updates, occasionally asking Linda or Sharon how they were performing. A part of her silently rooted for them to succeed, perhaps as a testament to the belief that people could indeed grow and evolve. The tipping point came when Crown Motors announced a grand event to celebrate the partnership signing with Green Core Africa, a gala complete with dignitaries, foreign investors, and the media. Victoria wanted to showcase the brilliance of the team behind Project Horizon. She asked each department to select representatives to attend the gala. Linda Hall selected James for the sales division, applauding his recent achievements. Sharon Morris nominated Marsha to assist with legal formalities at the event. On the night of the gala, the ballroom of Adub's most prestigious hotel shimmered with elegance. Glittering chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, and polished marble floors reflected the evening's vibrant hues. Guests arrived in formal attire, men in sleek suits, women in exquisite gowns. Traditional African prints melded seamlessly with modern haute couture, reflecting the continent's blend of heritage and innovation. Victoria arrived early in a fitted emerald green dress that draped gracefully around her figure, her hair styled into an elegant updo. She greeted local government officials, international investors, and representatives from Green Core Africa with poise. Flashbulbs popped from the cameras of journalists eager to capture the momentous signing. A stage at the front of the ballroom displayed the Crown Motors and Green Core Africa logos side by side, heralding a new era of collaboration. James showed up wearing a tailored charcoal suit, while Marsha donned a flowing purple gown. They moved cautiously through the throng of VIPs, mindful of their place in the hierarchy. They eventually spotted Linda Hall waving them over to a quieter corner where a small group of employees had gathered. "Enjoying yourselves?" Linda asked, handing each of them a flute of sparkling juice. "This is incredible," Marsha remarked, her voice laced with genuine awe. "I never thought I'd be part of something so important." James nodded, scanning the crowd. "It's a big moment for Crown Motors. A big moment for all of us," he said, reflecting on how far he had come in just a short time. His gaze then landed on Victoria, surrounded by dignitaries near the stage. She looked radiant, exuding both grace and command. The formalities began with speeches from key figures. Azubike opened by thanking everyone for their contributions and highlighting Crown Motors' journey from a small assembly plant to a continental powerhouse. Representatives from Green Core Africa spoke next, lauding the synergy between the two companies. Finally, Victoria took the stage, and the applause grew thunderous. Many in the audience admired her not just for her business acumen but for the philanthropic work that continued to define Crown Motors. As cameras flashed and microphones were raised, Victoria eloquently described the vision behind Project Horizon. She spoke of a future where Africa led the charge in sustainable mobility, where local talent drove technological breakthroughs, and where corporate success intertwined with community upliftment. Her words ignited the crowd, drawing cheers and admiration from across the ballroom. Then came the signing ceremony. A large document, emblazoned with the logos of both companies, was placed on a podium. Victoria and the CEO of Green Core Africa each signed with flourish, sealing the historic partnership. The crowd erupted in applause. James found himself clapping so hard his palms stung, a swell of pride and gratitude welling in his chest. Marsha was teary-eyed, overwhelmed by the significance of it all. Soon after, dinner was served, an array of gourmet dishes that combined traditional African flavors with contemporary culinary flair. Waiters in crisp attire served jollof-stuffed chicken roulade, plantain gratin, peppered snail canapés, and a medley of exotic fruits. A live band performed a fusion of Afrojazz and classical strings, the mellow tunes enveloping the guests. When the meal concluded, dancing commenced. Couples swirled across the dance floor under the gilded light of the chandeliers. James and Marsha lingered at a table, uncertain if they should join. It was then that Victoria approached them, a polite, if somewhat reserved, smile on her face. "Congratulations on your department's success, James," she said, her tone formal but not unkind. "Your sales figures have been impressive." He stood, feeling a rush of gratitude. "Thank you. And congratulations to you on this partnership. It's a massive accomplishment." Marsha to Rose. "Ms. Johnson, Sharon said you found our diligence on the legal side helpful. I'm really glad we could contribute." Victoria gave a small nod. "Yes, I appreciate that." She hesitated for a moment, as if weighing whether to say more. Finally, she added, "I'm aware of how hard you both have been working. I respect the effort." In that moment, Marsha summoned the courage to speak more candidly. "We owe you more than just an apology. We were wrong about everything, especially how we judged you. You didn't deserve that. James looked down at his dress shoes, exhaling quietly. I can't fully undo the mistakes I've made. But I'm committed to doing better. Not just here at Crown Motors, but as a person. Victoria's gaze flickered with an emotion neither James nor Marsha could quite place. Perhaps a blend of relief, lingering hurt, and cautious hope. I see your improvements, she said softly. Change isn't instantaneous. It's a process, and I'm willing to let that process unfold. They paused, letting the music and the chatter of the ballroom fill the silence. Finally, Victoria extended a graceful hand. Would you care to join the dance? It's a celebration after all. James felt his heart flutter, recalling simpler times when they danced at local music venues in Adamma. But he knew this was no romantic invitation. This was a gesture of goodwill, a sign that maybe the door to reconciliation was not entirely closed. Carefully, he placed his hand in hers. They stepped onto the dance floor, accompanied by Marsha, who was soon asked to dance by another junior manager from legal. A gentle melody enveloped them. Moving in sync, James was acutely aware that this moment was symbolic, a kind of closure for the past. Victoria's posture was poised, and though she maintained a certain distance, he could sense the faint acceptance in her stance. When the song ended, Victoria pulled away politely. Thank you, she said, her eyes meeting James's. And with that, she excused herself to attend to other guests. A palpable mixture of warmth and longing lingered in the space she vacated. The night wound down in a wave of laughter, handshakes, and clinking glasses. Guests departed, some heading to after-parties, others retiring to their hotel rooms. For James and Marsha, the walk to their car, one of Crown Motors' demonstration sedans lent to them for the event, was filled with reflective silence. Sliding into the driver's seat, James turned the key. He glanced at the rearview mirror, momentarily recalling the day he had seen Victoria on her old tricycle. The memory of their mocking laughter struck him with a pang of regret. Yet, tonight symbolized a fresh start. Perhaps their penance was to build something meaningful under the very company they had once scorned. In the weeks and months that followed, both James and Marsha continued to prove themselves. Their relationships with colleagues stabilized, and the whispers of their past transgressions faded. While they understood that Victoria would likely never invite them into her personal circle of trust again, they were grateful for her professionalism and the opportunity to carve out respectable careers for themselves. And so, in the ever-evolving tapestry of Adamma, a city that embodied both the old and the new, tradition and aspiration, 3 lives carried on, marked by lessons of humility, perseverance, and the inexorable power of second chances. They had all laughed once at a battered tricycle, failing to see the woman behind it. Now, they understood that material appearances could be deceptive. And in the end, it was the intangible qualities, grit, integrity, compassion, that truly drove a person forward. Though scars remained, growth was possible. Regret could give way to redemption, if one was willing to work for it. And in that realization lay the quiet triumph of them. The end. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.